Hello students, welcome to yet another history lesson. We have studied so much about revolutions. For example, in class 9, we discussed the French Revolution, which brought a complete change in the social, economic and political structure of France. Today, we are going to discuss another revolution that brought about a complete change in the ways things were produced. We call this the Industrial Revolution, as it led to industrial production or large-scale production of goods. The Industrial Revolution began in England in the first half of the 18th century. Industrialization usually means the growth of industries. When we talk about industrial production, we mean factory production. By industrial workers, we usually mean factory workers. Such ideas are incorrect because there was large-scale industrial production for an international market even before the Industrial Revolution started and factories were set up. This production was not done in factories, but was done at home or in cottage industries. So, we often refer to this phase of industrialization as proto-industrialization. Around this time, all European powers were trying to strengthen their own economies by establishing colonies in different parts of the world. This led to the expansion of world trade and the demand for goods. Colonies were essential to make the mother country rich. However, this posed a problem because merchants could not expand production in towns. This was because in towns and cities, urban crafts and trade guilds were powerful. These guilds were granted monopoly rights to trade in specific products by the rulers. Hence, it restricted the entry of new merchants in town. Merchants found it difficult to set up businesses here. So, the merchants of Europe turned to the countryside in the 17th and 18th centuries. There, they employed peasants and artisans to produce for an international market by offering them advances. This was also the time of the enclosure movement. Due to this, poor people were displaced from common lands. They could not gather firewood, vegetables, hay and straw. Hence, they had to look for alternative sources of income. Many people had tiny plots of land which could not provide work for all members of the household. So, when merchants came and offered advances to produce goods for them, they agreed. Income from proto-industrial production systems supplemented their shrinking income from cultivation. It also allowed them to stay with their families and involve family members in the work of cultivation. Close relationship developed between the town and the countryside. Merchants were based in towns, but the work was done mostly in the countryside. Let us have a look at the various stages involved in the making of cloth. A merchant clothier in England first purchased wool from a wool stapler and carried it to the spinners. Yarn or thread was spun from the wool. It was next taken to the weavers, fullers and finally to the dyers. The finishing was done in London before the export merchant sold the cloth in the international market. London came to be known as a finishing center. This proto-industrial system was a part of a network of commercial exchanges and was controlled by the merchants. The goods were not produced in the factories but by a vast number of producers working within their family farms. At each stage of production, 20 to 25 workers were employed by each merchant. This meant that each clothier was controlling hundreds of workers. The earliest factories in England came up by the 1730s. Their number multiplied in the late 18th century. The first symbol of the new era was cotton. Its production boomed in the late 19th century. In 1760, Britain was importing 2.5 million pounds of raw cotton to feed its cotton industry. By 1787, this import soared to 22 million pounds. A series of inventions in the 18th century increased the efficacy of each step of the production process: carding, twisting, and spinning, and rolling. Thanks to these inventions, each worker could produce stronger threads and yarn and increase the volume of production. Then, Richard Arkwright created the cotton mill. Till this time, cloth production was spread all over the countryside and carried out within village households. Now, the costly new machines could be purchased, set up, and maintained in the mill. Production activities were difficult to regulate in the countryside. Within the mill, all the processes were brought together under one roof and management. This allowed a more careful supervision over the production process. Though in the early 19th century, factories increasingly became an intimate part of the English landscape, however, most of the production continued in the workshops. Now the question arises, how rapid was the process of industrialization? Does industrialization mean only the growth of factory industries? Let us find out. The most important industries in Britain were the cotton and metal industry. Cotton was the leading sector in the first phase of industrialization up to the 1840s. After that, the iron and steel industry led the way. Railways expanded in England from the 1840s. From the 1860s, the demand for iron and steel increased rapidly in the colonies. By 1873, Britain was exporting iron and steel worth about £77 million, which was double the value of its cotton export. The new industries could not easily displace or remove the traditional industries. Even at the end of the 19th century, less than 20% of the total workforce was employed in technologically advanced industrial sectors. Textile was the most important industry. There was a great demand for textiles. However, a large portion of the output to meet the demand was not produced within factories. It was manufactured within domestic units. Traditional industries did not remain stagnant. Ordinary and small innovations were the basis of growth in many non-mechanized sectors such as food processing, building, pottery, glasswork, tanning, furniture making, and production of implements. New technology was expensive, unevenly distributed, and slow to spread. Moreover, merchants and industrialists could not trust them. The machines often broke down and repair was costly. They were not as effective as their inventors and manufacturers claimed. Consider the case of the steam engine. James Watt improved the steam engine produced by Newcomen and patented the new engine in 1781. His industrialist friend Matthew Boulton manufactured the new model. For years, he could not find buyers. At the beginning of the 19th century, there were no more than 321 steam engines all over England. Of these, 80 were in cotton industries, 9 in wool industries, and the rest in mining, canal works, and ironworks. Steam engines were not used in any of the other industries till much later in the century. So even the most powerful new technology that increased the productivity of labor many times was slow to be accepted by industries. According to the historians, the workers in the mid-19th century did not merely operate machines. They were traditional craftspeople or laborers. With that, we come to the end of our first video lesson on the Industrial Revolution in England. In our next video, we will get an inside view of the factories, of hand labor and steam power. Till then, think of the backdrop of industrialization, which we just covered. You can discuss the scenario in India around that time in history with your friends. See you soon.